Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rita Roy, CEO at the National Spine Health Foundation, and I'm your host for the Get Back to It podcast, where we tell real stories of healing and recovery. What does it mean to get back to it? It means overcoming injury through treatments that work in order to return to the people and activities you love, whatever that looks like for you. It means getting back to your life. We're here to share the success stories of those who did just that. And some of these stories you are not going to believe. At the Get Back to It podcast, our goal is to tell stories of spinal champions, people who've been able to achieve a better quality of life through spinal health care. In today's episode, I'm delighted to be speaking with Patrick Collins, a spinal champion who had issues with 2 cervical discs that had started to degenerate, bulge, and ultimately develop full herniations. Patrick is a former D1 collegiate athlete, a self-described lifelong gym rat, and post-spine surgery is still able to bow hunt in the mountains. Today, we'll talk about his journey and how he overcame this very common issue. Now that you know what to expect, let's get back to it and dive right into Patrick's story.
In mid-2017, I started having odd neurological and neuromuscular issues in my arms. I was very lucky to be good friends with one of the top spine surgeons in the country, and he immediately suspected I had a disc issue. And turns out he was correct. Imaging confirmed that I had 2 cervical discs that started to degenerate, bulge, and then became full-blown herniations.
Rather than just hope his pain would go away, Patrick made the smart choice to consult his friend who happened to be an expert in the field of spine care. This helped him find the correct pathway to healing early in his journey.
I was very lucky to be good friends with one of the top spine surgeons in the country who immediately suspected a disc issue. And turns out he was correct. Imaging confirmed I had 2 cervical discs that started to degenerate, bulge, and then became full-blown herniations. The herniated discs were severely pinching my spinal cord, and we decided on a 2-level disc replacement. I was young, active, and very fit. We wanted to keep as much mobility and movement as possible.
Since Patrick was young and in really great shape, he hadn't anticipated that he would be dealing with these issues at his age. But by staying on top of it from the start, Patrick began to carve out the best path to long-term stability. Ultimately, his diagnosis led to surgery.
Things went well post-surgery for about a year. Then different neurological issues started to present themselves. We took months going to different specialists to rule out ALS and other similar disorders. What we didn't know is that scar tissue had started to build up against the spinal column, and the subsequent nerve damage was accelerating. I had a second surgery, removing the 2 artificial discs and having a 3-level cervical fusion.
Sometimes, the first course of action doctors take isn't the final one. It can take being curious and seeking out a variety of opinions to get to the bottom of a spine issue. Patrick was diligent with trying to get to the root of the problem to ensure he didn't have to live in pain.
This certainly isn't the common path for most people with my neck or disc issues. I have some underlying genetic issues that lead to ligament laxity, which we believe complicated everything. Now, after 2 surgeries and a ton of physical therapy, I can do literally everything I want to do. It is not hyperbole to say that spine surgery saved my life. Without surgery, I wouldn't have been able to continue with my active lifestyle.
Because he sought the help he needed and found it, Patrick is now able to live his very best life pain-free. His story is truly a testament to what proper treatment and the right surgery can do for someone with a serious disc issue. It's one of the reasons we're so passionate about sharing stories like this. Patrick, your story is incredible because of your young age and your high fitness level. Many people think this can't happen to them and will often ignore issues or symptoms when they first arise, kind of just hoping that they'll go away. But your story is different. You sought treatment advice right away. What made you believe that you could conquer this pain that you were dealing with? And how did you know that you could trust what a doctor was telling you?
You know, growing up as an athlete through young high school, through college, I had many, many injuries. I've had every joint has been worked on, it feels like. And so, finding experts, knowing that you need help, knowing that something is wrong and has to get fixed is normal to me. And that's just what I've always done. So I do think that might sound odd, but when it came to my neck, I felt like it was just like an Achilles or a shoulder or a knee issue, in that this is a functional moving piece in my body that is not functioning the way it needs to. That's clear to me. And I need to figure out, how can we get this back to the best possible spot that it can be? So, the other part of that made it easier was one of my very dear friends is a spine surgeon. And I feel very, very lucky to have been in that position at that time.
Yeah.
That changed everything.
Yeah. That's such a unique and cherished place to be, to actually know somebody who's an expert. And I think so much of the time, we try to educate people in the foundation that, you've got to find a doctor who you trust, who you're going to have a relationship with, because it is a relationship with your surgeon. And if you don't have a good rapport or a good feeling, then get a second opinion. Find a doctor that you relate to and that you trust and you feel good about. And that's a really, really lucky place for you to have been, Patrick. That is awesome.
And the other part of that is inaction. I think people are scared, and inaction feels good sometimes when it comes to medical issues, right?
Yep.
And just knowing that something, when it's your spine, Rita, you've had spine issues, like you feel it, this is not right, and inaction isn't going to work. So for me, it was, we have to aggressively attack this.
Yeah, that is so beautifully said, Patrick. We talk about that all the time in the foundation. People delay treatment because they just think, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. This is going to go away, or I've got a little, but there is a point that most people get to where they say that I can't go on like this. Right. And I think, again, you were so blessed to have been an athlete for most of your life. You've been engaged in healthcare. You've had injuries. You overcome them. You get back out. I don't know what sport you played.
I played soccer.
So that's hard on the body, and definitely knees and ankles, and lot of stuff going on. And so you've experienced what that's like to have an injury, get it taken care of, move on with your life, and that's a really, really fortunate place to be. So kudos to you, Patrick. That is so awesome and so great that you're sharing that story with our listeners. But to your point, when it comes to back, I think, and I felt this for sure as a patient as well, that there's a bit of a stigma out there that, oh, there's something wrong with my spine. I don't want to, it's going to get worse. If I go somewhere, they're going to do something, it's going to make it worse. I better just leave it alone. And that's not the case. Not the case in today's world. At the foundation, we talk about the miracles of modern spinal health care. It's a different day. There are different treatment choices, and there are ways that we can approach fixing things. And I think talking about fixing things, your story, again, everybody's journey is unique to them. Your story is fascinating to me because you went in and got it fixed right away. But then something happened, right? So, you thought you had sort of overcome the issue, but then you begin to experience neurologic issues. And tell us what that was like when you started to feel like something's not right again.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was much harder, honestly, emotionally, the second time than the first time. And I think, Rita, to your point, because I thought we were good, right? I thought we had fixed this. I thought we had moved on, and we did. There was everything went perfectly in my surgery. The disc replacement was absolutely fine. What we didn't know was that I had some underlying health issues that have led to severe ligament laxity, which is also why I've had so many sports injuries, because my joints are too loose. I started having more neurological issues, and what really hit home was my son is I have 3 young kids, and my middle child, my son, is a very, very athletic and active kid, and he's big into lacrosse and basketball, and we play sports together all the time. And I realized that I could no longer shoot a basketball because my extremities, I was having nerve impingement, and my triceps just were not functioning.
Wow. And
so this is post-surgery. I'm trying to shoot hoops in my front yard with my, at that time, maybe 11-year-old, 12-year-old. And I functionally couldn't do it.
Wow.
And that was devastating, because then just to sit there and think what is wrong? Why is this happening? And will I be able to forget going to the gym or shooting my bow,
Yeah.
will I be able to pick up my kids?
Yeah.
It really did come to what is going on, and something is amiss.
Yeah.
And we suspected, many different
Oh my
things
gosh.
before we narrowed it back down to spine. And it took quite a while. It took a lot of experts. It took, ruling out, things like ALS and things like other neuromuscular, brain health issues.
That is just so frightening. As I'm sitting here talking with you and we're looking at each other, and I see a very handsome Patrick Collins, very fit, and beautiful photos behind you of your gorgeous family. And, so much of the time when we talk to people in spine, they say, at the end of the day, I just want to be with my kids. I just want to spend time with my family. I don't want to miss a minute of being able to be active with my kids, let alone, playing the sports that I want to play as I age and go on with my life. So that's so interesting that you're saying the exact same thing that we hear over and over from people. And again, I'm looking at you, you're so vibrant and healthy, and you look great. And you never know what people go through. And, thinking that you might have a neuromuscular disorder is so frightening. And, to have to go through that process of ruling that stuff out, whether it's MS or early Parkinson's or ALS or, any of the neuromuscular conditions which happen to people, that is emotionally draining for sure.
It's exhausting. And I'm also lucky enough to be a business owner and to have two partners who really let me take almost more than, I think, a year, basically off, which also helped recovery, right?
Yeah.
Because that second surgery is very impactful on your body, and the amount of physical therapy. And I can't stress how important that is.
Yeah.
The follow-up to, the action was, let's get this fixed, but then the care and the time that it takes with quality physical therapists working to get that range of motion back, working to get strength back, working to get kind of the kinks of your system back online.
Yeah, that's so true. So let's back up a second before I want to talk a little bit about your recovery as well. But so you went through the neurological workup that took time. Emotionally, it takes time. It takes time off from work. You've got to get those workups done. And then at some point you realize that maybe it was related to the surgery. How did that come about, and how did you get to that place?
So it was constant conversation with my original spine surgeon. It's conversation with numerous other health experts that have been referred to rule out all the things that you just talked about, rule out Parkinson's, rule out ALS, rule out MS. And those are hard things to rule out, Rita, as you know, as a doctor, because there's no blood test that says, hey, you have this.
Right.
It's exclusion. So that takes a lot of time, and just the constant communication and collaboration with all of those doctors, all of the experts over a long period of time kind of led us back to what else can this be?
Yeah.
Right. I have a pickup truck, and getting out of my pickup truck, I slipped and put my hands out, and because it's tall, on the seat to kind of brace myself, and my triceps didn't catch my body weight, and I slammed physically into my truck. I remember thinking, wow, your arms just do not work. And so, then it was, let's start over again. What else could this be? And different imaging, you'd probably know what it was. Finally saw that scar tissue building up around the spinal column that was putting pressure on everything, that was then shutting down, my nervous system.
My goodness. So what was that like when your surgeon came to you? He's a friend and your surgeon, and he sees this. And of course, the scar tissue probably, evolved over the course of the year. So it didn't happen right away. So you were feeling great until that happened. What was that like with your surgeon when he came to you and said, I've got good news and bad news?
Yeah. And, exactly to your point. And on one hand, it was a relief because we think now we know what this is, right?
Yeah.
And what I didn't want it to be was, some type of serious neurological disorder that
had no cure.
It's no cure, right? And so knowing that it is an impingement, knowing that it's something that we can address, whether that be, physical therapy or surgery, in this case, obviously surgery, I was relieved, to be frank. And again, the idea of going through another surgery It was just like, we have to do this.
Yeah.
There is no alternative.
Right.
So what is the point of waiting? Let's do it tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, really?
I mean, that is exactly how I wanted to get it done, because look, it's a long road to recovery.
Yeah.
Why am I going to prolong this? Let's get going. And so we went in, took out the 2 artificial discs and did a 3-level fusion, which was, for somebody as, relatively young as I am and as active as I am, a 3-level fusion was an intimidating prospect, because, you really do hear a lot about losing mobility. You're taking the ability for your head, on some level to not move the way that it really wants to. I really haven't found that to be the case. My mobility is fantastic. Is it slightly less than it was? I'm sure it is to a few degrees, but it's not significant. Yeah. It doesn't impact anything. I'm still into high intensity interval training. I hunt all over the world in the mountains with my bow.
Amazing.
It just doesn't, the fusion has not impacted me to the level that I really did anticipate it would. I fully anticipated a different lifestyle post-surgery, and that hasn't been the case.
That's amazing. And, looking back at the decision making, it was the right decision to go with a disc replacement. You're the perfect candidate for it. Yep. And then, that had the outcome that nobody could have predicted or anticipated. And so next thing is the fusion. And, I think people do fear the fusion, right? There's that fear of the fusion. And that's what we're doing here today, is we're talking about how to overcome those fears, how to get educated, hear from people what it means and what the recovery is like, and getting back to your life. So that's just absolutely, Patrick, I didn't know your story. I mean, I didn't know this. Absolutely amazing. And so you have the 3-level fusion. You get that done right away. And talk to me what it was like when you woke up, and sort of what's the recovery like? What does that look like? You mentioned high quality physical therapy. What do you mean by that?
Sure. I vividly remember this. I remember waking up from surgery. You're that groggy, you're coming to, and feeling immensely grateful for the healthcare providers, feeling immensely grateful for my surgeon, feeling grateful for the nurses that were there. I just overwhelming feeling of, we've addressed something and now we're moving on. I absolutely remember waking up saying to myself, now the work starts.
Yeah.
And that physical therapy, it's obviously it's on your spinal column, but the amount of muscular and nerve issues that follow from this much trauma and impact to your spinal column is very significant. And I'm no stranger to injury and physical therapy, and I was shocked with how much work it really takes to get back to where you want to be and where you were.
Yeah.
I found a group referred by my surgeon that it had to be 3 times a week for months, of probably 5 to 6 months of real PT. And it, anything from massage to dry needling to mobility work to range of motion work to strengthening to then getting back to cardiovascular fitness and health. And then, the process of getting back in the gym and putting muscle back on, because I had lost so much weight. Yeah. But, having that team post surgery was, just a godsend. Yeah. That's really where the work starts. And then it's also what I see, Rita. You talk to other people who have had spine issues, and whether they've been addressed surgically or through other means, I see a lot of people don't do enough physical therapy. Yeah. And then, this didn't work. And when I hear them and I'm talking to them and I understand the issues because I've had them, I often come to my own non-medical education conclusion that you didn't work on this enough. Right. We've got to get you back with a therapist and on a plan over a period of time to get back to where you want to be.
Yeah. I remember when I was having my surgery and I found out that I needed a fusion, and it was absolutely the right surgery for my lumbar L4, L5 area. And my surgeon looked at me and he said, okay, we're going to do our part. We're going to do the surgery. You're going to have an awesome surgery. And, he looked at me straight into my eyes. It was like he's looking into my soul, and he pointed his finger at me and he said, you have to do your part. I'm doing my part. You have to do your part. And it was just like this flood of like, holy moly, I got to do this. I have to do this. And you're right, Patrick. I mean, you have to do your part. The surgery, it's just, that's just a mechanical thing that
Yep.
you want the best technician with the brightest mind, with the best team around to go and do your surgery right. But then you've got to do the healing and the recovery on your own. And having a team around you to help you do that is critical. For me, it was critical. And it sounds like you were lucky, like I was, to have a great team to talk about nutrition, bone health. Like
Yep.
those, I'm like, bone health? This is my back.
Absolutely.
Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
the back's a bone.
Yep.
It's a bunch of bones back there.
And the surgery, sets the stage for the recovery.
That's right.
And so to your doctor's point, once they've done their job, it is now, up to you to initiate the healing and recovery process diligently.
Yeah.
And get back to where you want to be.
I love what you just said. And we are going to use that quote. The surgeon sets the stage for recovery. That is
Yep.
beautiful. That just nails it. That's exactly what it is. Really, really well said. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. So Patrick,
Sure.
you know the foundation, you know the work that we do. We do these Spinal Champion stories. Tell me how you heard about the foundation and what you think about the resources that we're doing and how people can use them.
So I heard about the foundation through, my issues really, and just being exposed to the world of spine health in general. So, I think there is a misconception out there that anytime you've got something going on, whether it's your neck, your lower back, that if you're going to talk to a doctor about it, they're immediately going to want to do surgery. And as you and I know, that's just one aspect of spine health. And oftentimes, and in fact, the majority of the time, surgery is not going to be necessarily the answer, but it's going to be rehab. It's going to be other preventative treatments, or it can be many different non-operative treatments. But all of that world is intimidating, and it's hard to get your hands around it, your head around it. And I think that's what the National Spine Health Foundation does, for patients. Is it's a resource that distills down at a level that I think most people can then digest and understand, and then start to, make decisions around their own spine health, and then find those resources, talk to the professionals, and then look towards a path to recovery, whatever that is. Any injury can kind of make you feel on an island. You feel all of a sudden you're not what you were, and you can't suddenly, unless you've recovered, do the things that you want to do. And you do feel alone sometimes. And especially with back, because spine is so impactful to everything that we do when we move. Absolutely everything. Your spine, your body wraps around your spine. Everything is an extension of what's going on here in your core. So it's enormously impactful, and it's scary. And understanding that you are not alone, that there are many other people out there who are going through similar or even almost absolutely identical issues is a big deal. And the National Spine Health Foundation, I think, does a fantastic job of opening those doors to understanding that there are resources, there are people to talk to. This isn't something that, you're experiencing in a vacuum, and that they can connect you, and you can have access to the resources and the community that understands what you're going through.
It's awesome. We'll be using that soundbite, that clip. We're going to be using
Great.
that. Patrick, your story is inspiring because you've been able to get back to your very active life, and you were also able to get to the bottom of what was causing the problem. What might you say to someone who hasn't yet figured out what's wrong with them? How would you encourage them to not give up searching? Where would you encourage them to go? What advice do you have?
Take action. It literally pains me sometimes to see friends, coworkers, employees, people in your spheres that you can tell have an issue, right? You can tell that their lower back hurts. You can tell that they're not turning their head the way they were. They're wincing. Like, you can see back pain in people. And, talking to people, I think people are scared, but it's a lack of taking action. And if something isn't working where we are right now in 2022, it's unbelievable what can be done. It's absolutely amazing. Like, we're lucky to be in this time where we can address so many of these issues. And let's figure out what that issue is. You cannot fix what you do not understand. We have to understand what this is. So I very much encourage people, take the step, talk to a spine care physician. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have surgery. The goal here is to understand what's going on. And once you understand what's going on, then let's think about that. And, what do we do from here? Coming back to the National Spine Health Foundation, if patients can understand what is happening and then have access to resources, people, a community to understand this is what I did, and to understand here are different paths that people take, either operative or non-operative. Let's get back to where we want to be, to then do all the things that, to go shoot hoops, to go shoot your bow, to go play with your kids. But we have to take action. That's so
well said. So much of the time we spend creating messaging around encouraging people to see a spine expert. And a spine expert is typically a spine surgeon. But to your point, Patrick, people say, if I go to a surgeon, they're just going to want to do surgery. But I think it's unique in spine. I think this is a very different field of medicine in that way, in that the spine surgeon really is the spine expert, and they can see the entire range of treatment options that they can offer to patients. So, it's everything from acupuncture, yoga, physical therapy, injections, all the way to the end, spine surgery. And so many of our medical and scientific board members will say, it's really 80% of the time people don't need surgery. 80%, that's a lot. And so, a spine surgeon is a different kind of surgeon, and we want to get that message out. So, so I think that's such an important point you're making. Take action, but get informed, right? So get informed. And that's, again, to your point, that's where the foundation comes in. Understand what's happening in this field, understand what the treatment options are, and know that your journey is unlike anybody else's. There's no cookie cutter approach to anybody's journey. I mean, some things are, typical, but most of the time it isn't, because everybody's body is different. Everyone's genetics are different. Everybody's healing is different. Who knows if you're going to make scar tissue or not, right? Could happen. Most of the time it doesn't, but sometimes it does. So that's a very good point. Take action, get informed. We live in a world of shared decision-making. So doctors are going to say, here are the choices. What's your preference? How do you want your journey to go? And so that's where the foundation plays, I think, a critical role in helping people understand what the options are. Well, what did other people do? What have others done? What's been successful for other people? And, we're on a mission to tell those stories and to share that knowledge. So, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing your knowledge with everybody. It means a lot to me. I think it means a lot to
Absolutely.
Our listeners, and we just so appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rita. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
At the National Spine Health Foundation, something we believe in most is providing hope for recovery through sharing stories of success and expertise. It isn't always easy to find someone to relate to, even though 100 million adults suffer from neck or low back pain every year. To hear more stories of spinal champion recovery and access educational materials about spine health, visit us at spinehealth.org. If you're interested in supporting our show financially, you can contribute at the link provided. Thank you for listening.